Radio is one of the most important inventions in human history. It's revolutionized the way we communicate, share information, and entertain ourselves. But where did it all begin? How was it discovered? Well, the invention of radio is often attributed to the Italian physicist and inventor Guglielmo Marconi. Marconi was born in Bologna, Italy in 1874 and became interested in science and technology at an early age. He was particularly fascinated by the work of James Clerk Maxwell and Heinrich Hertz, who had demonstrated the existence of electromagnetic waves. Marconi saw the potential for using these waves for communication and began experimenting with radio technology in the late 1890s. Marconi's early experiments were focused on sending signals over short distances. He made several important improvements to the technology, including the development of a more powerful transmitter and the use of a coherer, which allowed him to send messages further and with greater clarity. In December 1901, Marconi succeeded in sending the first transatlantic radio transmission, a feat that was considered impossible at the time. This achievement made Marconi a celebrity and earned him widespread recognition as the inventor of radio. But was Marconi the only person known for developing the radio? You'll be shocked when you find out who else is responsible for this amazing invention. Spoiler alert, you may recognize his name. Stay tuned to see who it is. Marconi wasn't the only scientist who had a hand in the radio's invention. In fact, Nikola Tesla was also experimenting with radio waves and making important contributions to the field. In addition, the US Patent Office was slow to recognize Marconi's claim to the invention of radio, and several of his patents were eventually overturned. We can only imagine how frustrating that was for him. However, like all the greats we cover on this channel, Marconi persisted. Marconi continued to work on improving radio technology and promoting its use. He founded the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company and became a wealthy man through his commercial exploitation of the technology. He was awarded several important awards and honors, including the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909. So even though his patents may have failed at first, Marconi definitely got the last laugh when it came to reaping the benefits of radio technology. And while Marconi is often credited with inventing radio, the history of radio is much more complex. Many other scientists and inventors made important contributions to the development of radio technology, and Marconi himself was not without controversy. Nevertheless, his early experiments and commercial success helped to establish radio as an important technology and a major force in shaping the world as we know it today. So, in what ways exactly did radio change our society? We'll get to that soon, but first, tell us down below if you learned anything new about the history of radio. We can't wait to hear what you all have to say. Also, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to leave us a like and of course subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any more awesome content like this. Now, let's get back to the video. The invention of radio was a long and complicated process, but once it hit the market, it changed society for the better. How? Well, let's take a look. Before there were movie theaters and Netflix, there was radio. It helped revolutionize entertainment that the whole family could enjoy. How so? Well, through radio plays. Although keep in mind that this was a time where people didn't exactly have works of fiction available at their fingertips, and some pieces of art were downright terrifying to them. How do we know this? Well, just ask Orson Welles. On October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles directed a live radio play of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. The story was acted out as if it were breaking news. People actually believed the story of a Martian invasion was real. This caused fear and panic among listeners, leading to many calling the police and radio stations. The incident made headlines across the US and is considered by some to be the first instance of fake news. It shows how powerful radio can be in influencing people's beliefs and actions. Many questioned whether or not Wells had intended to cause such panic with his play. Although the general public believes it was unintentional, no one really knows for sure. However, if it was, then one could argue that the radio was responsible for the very first act of trolling done on a large scale, just about 70 years before it had been made popular on the internet. Eventually, radio plays evolved into more wholesome affairs, but Wells's War of the Worlds will definitely go down in radio history. One of the first things that may come to your mind when you hear of the radio is music, and you wouldn't be wrong. Radio has greatly impacted the music industry and helped to establish it. The radio made it possible for music to reach a wider audience, leading to the recognition of many successful artists and the discovery of new music globally. Music programs on the radio played a crucial role in defining the careers of many artists and promoting their music. The rise of FM radio stations in the 1930s and 1940s was significant because of the better audio quality they offered compared to AM radio. FM radio stations became popular with music lovers around the world. Despite the growth of television and the internet, FM radio continues to be popular, especially in countries with large music-loving populations. Top artists still appear on radio stations for promotions, talks, or performances, and some radio stations even host their own music festivals. Radio shows are still hugely popular today. You can't turn on your radio without tuning into one. Also, one could argue that radio paved the way for a certain medium that's found an immense amount of popularity in recent years. Yes, we're talking about podcasts. Would they still exist if radio wasn't invented? Share your thoughts on this below. While radios changed the landscape of the music world, they weren't just used to jamming out to your favorite songs. The radio helped spread more serious messages through broadcasting political speeches. In fact, the first commercial radio station, KDKA, broadcasted the results of the US presidential election on November 2nd, 1920, informing people about the election results instantly. That's definitely something we take for granted today. Radio has also been used by advocates of civil rights and peace to spread their messages. For example, Mahatma Gandhi delivered his first and only address on All India Radio, AIR, in 1947, and Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech was also broadcast on the radio. These speeches influenced millions of people around the world and helped to unite people behind important causes. So you may be thinking, if radio was so groundbreaking, how did people receive news before it? Well, before radio was invented, the fastest way to share important information and stay in touch with the world was by telegraph. However, this method had limitations, including needing to know Morse code and having infrastructure like wires. Telephones existed at the time, but they were primarily used for direct conversation instead of mass broadcasting. Radio changed the way information was shared by allowing it to be transmitted easily and widely. By the early 20th century, radio became the main source of broadcast news, allowing people to quickly learn about events happening in other parts of the world. The first radio news program was broadcast on August 31st, 1920, from a radio station in Detroit, USA. 2 years later, the British Broadcasting Company, later known as the BBC, was formed on October 18, 1922, and launched its daily radio service in November of the same year. Even today, radio remains relevant as a source of information, despite the rise of social media. Think about it, when you're in your car on your way to work, you can just easily tune into radio news, just like the generations before us did. Did you know that radio didn't just change the lives of civilians, it also changed how our militaries function? Well, how? Just keep watching to find out. You have to keep in mind that during the time the radio was being developed, 2 world wars were on the horizon. It was invented just in time because the radio ended up playing an important role in spreading information during these wars. During World War I, the military realized the importance of quick communication, which was made possible through the use of radio. During World War II, the radio became a crucial tool for soldiers on both sides to communicate quickly and effectively. Portable radios were used to ensure that commands from higher-ups were quickly communicated to soldiers on the ground. The radio also helped resistance forces communicate and played a crucial role in the fight against the Nazis. The need for improved communication during the war led to the development of better radio technology. And even after the war, radio technology continued to advance and remains important to modern armed forces. Also, a great non-military example of how the radio was used to save lives was during the Titanic disaster of 1912. Modern historians credit the radio for saving the lives of over 700 Titanic survivors when the ship was hit by an iceberg and sank in the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, had it not been for radio communication via wireless telegraph, there would have been no survivors. Over the decades, radio became a part of people's lives, as well as everyone from truck drivers and pilots to law enforcement officers and school kids, such as those in Singapore who grew up listening to educational storytelling and other programs on the radio. Although we may take the radio for granted now, in the 21st century, it's always important to look back and appreciate the tech that came before us. Who knows how different this world would have ended up being if the radio was never invented in the first place?